this is the most insane rogue build that nobody is talking about. It uses no core skill, no imbuement, and no uniques, and is absolutely dominating everything in Season 4 of Diablo 4. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, it's built just like a Blizzard Sork. It has massive AoE and single target drain just by stacking a ton of attacks on top of each other like it's nothing, and we're only using a basic skill. Now, before we get started, I do all kinds of builds like this, taking off meta things and trying to make them as good as I can. If you like this one, don't forget to subscribe to get more sent to you. If you leave me a like, that would help a lot, and leave a comment to let me know what you would like to see built next. All right, let's get into this. So I'm not going to go through the gear entirely, right? There is a D4 planner linked down below that you can see, but I want to show you the interactions that make this work. So right away, the two most important things and the changes that were made this season to spur this idea are the vengeful aspect, which gives us a lucky hit chance when we damage a vulnerable enemy to create an arrow storm, and also boosts the overall damage of arrow storms, and the aspect of arrow storms. This is just a marksman skill, gives us a lucky hit chance, and it boosts the damage once again. So if we do a marksman skill that hits a vulnerable enemy, we have two separate lucky hit chances to get arrow storms going. And once they start pouring down, as you can see, they attack really, really quickly. I tried this a bunch of different ways. I tried it with Barrage to hit a bunch of stuff at once. That was the original idea. And then I realized the simplest, most effective way is just to spam Heartseeker. The thing about Heartseeker that's so great is we have tracking, right? We're an aimbot. Look, I'm looking the complete opposite direction, and it's just blasting these guys to pieces. And this works so incredibly well in Nightmare Dungeons, in the pit. I've only had time to push up to tier 40 of the pit so far, but I cleared that pretty easily at level 85 earlier today. So it's entirely viable and it completely works. And what you can do with this is you can take cover. You can be behind a wall. You can just shoot in through the door and let this thing go. You can also track in front of you to see if anything's coming, because you just walk up, fire one, and if that arrow gets a little crooked like that, well, then you know there's monsters in the room. So those are the two key aspects. Now, to take our plan of using Heartseeker, we're also adding the Moonrise so that we get faster attack speed. We want to spam these as much as we can, get as many arrow storms ramping as fast as we can, and rapid, right? Pretty obvious one. We want to be firing Heartseeker like crazy. We're also taking Hectic, and I'll tell you why. We're just going to keep using our basic to reset our other cooldowns, and that's specifically our Smoke Grenade is a big one for how we play. We're taking Umbrus. You can see the 5 Dark Shrouds on me right now. I'm always going to have those Dark Shrouds because we're just critting like crazy. So we get a lot of free Dark Shroud damage reduction without having to have it on our skill bar. We're taking Explosive Verve. This is so that our grenade skills count as trap skills. And the reason we're doing that is because we're using Blast Trapper's aspect. So when we deal damage to someone affected by a trap skill, which for us is a grenade skill, it does an explosion and it also applies vulnerable. You'll see these explosions. There's two types happening. They come from blast trappers and from the victimized key passive, but these happen all the time. And there's one other sneaky reason that we're taking blast trappers, which I'll show you in the ability tree in a little bit here. We're taking Might. This is a pretty standard, obvious choice, right? We're always going to have this up. 20% DR, can't lose with that. And Ghostwalker, really good to have. We have 3 sources of Unstoppable in this build, so Ghostwalker is just always going to be active. It gives us movement speed. It prevents us from getting trapped or swarmed in mobs in a really high density. And lastly is Inner Calm. Inner Calm is actually our best general damage buff, and you'll find yourself standing still a lot while you just blast. And that thing's just going to come up and give you more and more damage. I did look at Edge Masters because we always have full resource. It doesn't work, it appears, and I think that's because Arrow Storm is an effect rather than a skill, so it's not proccing Edge Masters. And then Tempering, I think there's a lot of room to play around with this, so try out whatever you'd like. I took a chance to daze all over the place, and that's because of a node in our Paragon board. So I took a chance to daze where I could. And I also took chance for Heartseeker projectiles to cast twice. That just helps us spam infinitely as we get into big crowds. Turns out to be really, really useful. The last thing I'll say about gearing, and I know we're all still learning about it, with this specific setup, life on hit, if you stack it places, makes you basically immortal. Every single one of those damage ticks you see, that's a hit. So you're just restoring the amount of life every single time that happens. You'll get hit and your health bar will go down below half, and then it just shoots back up. So that's kind of the crux of the aspects we're using. Like I said, I don't think any uniques would actually make this better, so I chose not to use any of them. You could argue using like Tybalts for a little more damage or something, but I don't think it's worth giving up Might. On the specializations front, we're using inner sight. Now, the first thing is this was a process of elimination choice, right? We don't have a core skill, so combo points and preparation are both just not useful to us. But it turns out inner sight actually has a ton of utility in the setup. The first thing is every time it fills, we get a 25% crit chance boost, so we just crit more and more often. The second thing is we take a Paragon node called Leyrana's Instinct. Every time it fills up, we have a 100% dodge chance for 2 seconds. So every time it fills up, we are again immortal for 2 seconds. I want to show you how fast this fills up, right? If you look down here in the bottom right, this is our inner sight gauge. And once this fills up, we get that 25% crit chance for 4 seconds and 100% dodge chance for 2 seconds. So watch that. I'm not even going to shoot the guy I'm supposed to be shooting. Just watch this happen. Boom, done. Right? And I'll keep doing this for a second just because it's fun with Heartseeker. Let me shoot the other way and watch this keep working. Um, Boom, done again, right? The inner sight option isn't always there. Like, there'll be a couple seconds here where there's no target. It's asking me to hit, but the second one comes up, we just insta-fill that thing up and we get those buffs. So inner sight actually very good for us. Now on the Paragon, I'm actually only level 95 right now, so I don't have it filled in all the way. You can see what it's going to be in the D4 planner. I'm not going to go through all of this, but we're taking a lot of legendary nodes and we're using certain glyphs. So the first glyph we're taking is Chip. Basically, physical damage increases, it stacks, and you see every one of those ticks is physical damage. This is always going to be max. We're getting a big damage multiplier from having that. Here we're taking Devious. When you hit an enemy with attack that applies crowd control, they take stacking damage from us, right? And that's why I'm taking the chance to daze. Obviously, our smoke grenade does it, but we can only do that really once in a given fight. So we want to take those lucky hit procs to daze to stack that up and get more damage. On that same board, like I said, we're taking Leyrana's Instinct. So this is our 100% dodge for 2 seconds. The second part doesn't apply to us because we don't have core skills, but still it's 2 seconds of invulnerability as a result of using inner sight. Over here, we're taking Pride. This is another damage multiplier. Exploit Weakness. So whenever we deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they take stacking damage. This really helps us snowball in fights against bosses. Like if you saw that clip against Duriel, once you start really ramping on them, they go down fast. And it's because all of these different aspects and nodes, they stack on top of each other. The more times you hit, the better off you are. Up here, we're taking exploit. We want vulnerable where we can get it. We also want more vulnerable damage for our victimized key passive, and I'll run through the skill tree in a second here. But that's, it gives us a bonus there. 5x increased damage for each enemy that's crowd controlled, and that's going to be a ton of them between the days and the smoke grenades. This is actually going to be snare, which makes our smoke grenade even bigger to make sure that we're always getting maximum benefit from cheap shot. And then down over here, we have ambush. Enemies affected by trap skills take 10x more damage, which remember, for us, grenades are trap skills. And that smoke grenade is going to be constant. I'll show you that in the skill tree. And deadly ambush, 23x crit damage to enemies affected by trap skills. So all these things together allow us to ramp like crazy on bosses. It wipes out mobs with AoE, and we have this incredible ability to play defensively positioned while we fight that I've never seen in a build before. So in the skill tree, we're taking Heartseeker, right? And then we're taking that, and then we're actually going to do the ricochet. We want to hit as many people as possible. Each one of those ricochets is another hit, which is another chance for a lucky hit, which is another chance for an arrow storm. So this is how we get so many arrow storms all over the screen. Put 3 out of 3 in close DR, 3 out of 3 in movement speed. Those are just good quality of life. We're taking Shadow Step with the option to stun. If we have to Shadow Step to break CC, we'd really like to stun the person we hit so that they don't just melt us. 3 out of 3 for reduced damage over time effects. 18% DR while we're control impaired. We're trying to be tanky here. We want 3 out of 3 on weapon mastery. And we're going to use a bow. So it's 12x increased damage to vulnerable. We're taking the bow because we want attack speed with builds like this. And like I mentioned, a Blizzard Sword, the faster you attack, the more it just ramps. So the bow is our weapon of choice for sure here. We're taking dash with the option to reduce its cooldown. We're taking 3 out of 3 in agile, more dodge. 3 out of 3 that when we're stealth, we're going to heal. That comes in handy because you'll see we run concealment. 3 out of 3 on exploit for more damage, and 3 out of 3 on malice, again, more damage. Concealment we do use. It's our second source of unstoppable after Shadow Step. And every single time we break concealment, we're guaranteed to create vulnerable. We want to keep the vulnerable up because Vengeful is only going to proc if they're vulnerable. So this is just maximizing our arrow storms. 5 out of 5 in smoke grenade. We also took some tempering that improved the duration of our smoke grenade. And so you can see it's on an 11.9 second cooldown and it does a daze for 9.6 seconds. It's basically permanent daze. It's through the roof. And I haven't even fully invested in this. You could get this to a point, I'm certain, that it lasts longer than the cooldown. Pretty crazy. And when we hit someone with it, it's a 25x multiplier. It's just a ton of utility. Um, yeah, it's just a great ability. And then dealing damage to them has a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown by a second or 3 seconds if they're vulnerable. We just always have it. And when we get in trouble, if we get rushed by a mob in a nightmare dungeon, we just chuck that thing at them. They stand still. We have a meat shield while we just create, arrows all over the place behind them. 5 out of 5 in Dark Shroud, even though it's not on our skill bar. Like I said, the Umbrus aspect, we crit so much that just we always have these. So we want as much DR as we can get from them. And we're also taking the upgrade that gives us more crit chance while we have them. And that's all the time. 1 out of 3 in Shadow Crash. This is a sneaky node, and it's because the shadow damage has a 10% chance to stun for half a second. Like I said, we want as many instances of CC as possible so that our Devious Glyph keeps stacking. And with Blast Trappers, those are shadow explosions. So every time that happens, and you saw how fast it is, there is a chance to stun. We're stunning and dazing a ton, and this helps us stack Devious. In this instance, we're going with Shadow Clone. Obviously, there's a debate here. You could totally take Rain of Arrows if you just want to make it constantly rain arrows. I found Shadow Clone to be more useful, even though the knockdown from Rain of Arrows is good. This is a third source of Unstoppable, and that's its biggest thing. But also, it just helps us spam really, really quickly. It helps us ramp up our damage faster. So I like Shadow Clone here, but feel free to take Rain of Arrows if that's your preference. And then the Victimized Key passive. Another lucky hit proc, dealing damage to a vulnerable enemy has a 50% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 134% of the original damage to them and surrounding enemies, and that's increased by 120% of our vulnerable damage bonus. For us right now, it's 483% because we take a lot of vulnerable damage because that's sort of the crux of this entire thing. And that's it. That's the setup. I'm telling you, this build is insane. It feels so fluid and fun to play. You don't have to worry about resource. You don't even have to aim. You can shoot around walls and kill mobs before they even see you. Everything about it is just fantastic. Who says rogues can't be Blizzard Sorks too, right? We all want to be Blizzard Sorks at the end of the day. That's it. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.